Okay, ready.
Come on into the dining room. So this is the formal dining room that the Campbells would have done the majority of their entertaining in. If you're serving a full Georgian dinner, you're serving two courses, but 8 to 10 dishes each, plus a dessert course. So this room is currently set up for dessert. The Campbells, at any given year, depending on what census record you looked at, they had 8 to 12 servants. So once you completed the first course, servants would come in, remove the tablecloth and everything on it, reset it for the second course with another tablecloth. After you're done the second course, they would do the same thing, remove it all, and set down they place one of their table as shown here. That box you're looking over there, it's called a cellarette. A cellarette is essentially a small cellar. Has little wheels on it under the cloth feet. And it allowed you to have cold, fresh water at the table, or to the cooler, you fill it with ice. It was a way to do all these things and objects that helped you serve yourself, even though the Campbells had plenty of servants. And the cellarette is one of them. Servants were not supposed to be seen, nor heard, nor spoken to, nor were they supposed to interact with guests. So only one servant would actually remain in the room. They would stand in this back corner, and you could signal, and you could see the butler mirror to another angle in the room. Therefore, in the back doors there are now our modern offices, but it was the butler's pantry. So servants could pop out from behind this door over here, come stand in this corner, signal the guy in the mirror on the opposite side, and therefore communicate without actually interrupting the party or interacting with any guests. So on the table here we have, again, the serve yourself implements. The crystal bowl, you can see a cup tipped into the bottom head of the table there. Mixing bowl, fill them with water if you were cheaper, ice if you could afford it, and you could rinse out your glass between different types of drinks. You then place that wine bottle that you were using here on the wine caddy, also made out of silver and ivory. Very fancy, very expensive. It was very impolite to get up and lean over a table. Most people, you had to stay seated and eat exactly what was around you. So a wine caddy allowed you to move a bottle of wine around the table. Over here in the center, we have an object called an apern. It's a French word. There's no one-to-one English translation. Essentially, it's a serving bowl with many different serving bowls for things that were imported. So citrus fruits like Spanish oranges, or candied nuts, or little sweetmeats. Things that you wouldn't necessarily put on a guest's plate, because if they didn't like an orange, the polite thing to do would be to call a servant and say, throw this away, they do not care for it. Therefore, having the little bowls allowed you to take the bowls out, pass them around the table, and then return them and not waste any food. Back over here, we have our China cabinet tables, lots of different styles. At the time, these were all various donations over the years, and shows what was the most in trend at different periods. This one is the one we often reference. It's a design called Dragons in Compartments. It's a hand-painted design made in, and I apologize, I always butcher this name, Worcester, that's how it's spelled, in England. So though it is a very Asian-looking design, it was made in England.
Yeah.
Because though people at this time wanted they wanted designs that looked exotic. They wanted what was new, what was different, but they wanted it to be made and sourced from England. So English china makers started recreating these patterns with kind of mixed results. You get some odd perspective things happening through the tables and the dragon's faces. Not a single one of these looks alike. But having it made in England also meant you could customize it. So on the table over here, I always put out a couple different representations of the different sets that we have. So some of them have a coat of arms in the middle, some of them have a sword. Some of them have I believe it's a swan
Yeah.
But we're lucky this house made it through all the years.
Yeah.
As you can see on the ground here, your bedroom is also your bathroom. So we have our classic chamber pot over here. If you were a man, you could use what's called a slop bucket, which is sort of a urinal type thing. I usually reference the fact that even though inventions such as the water closet, the first toilet, those things existed, but they were not common in Canada. A lot of people said, why would I build a separate room with a separate closet, with a separate contraption, when chamber pots and servants work just fine for me? So I often say, yes, many inventions existed at this time, but the more common thing was to just have a chamber pot. Therefore, a servant would come in a couple times a day, check the chamber pot, see if it's been used. If it's been used, they might yell at the window, look out, and throw the contents out the window. Toronto had two unfortunate names at this time, back when it was the town of York. Muddy York, and then later down the road, Hogtown, because of how many things we export. So, very smelly place to live. Roads were unpaved. I believe when Sir William Campbell moved here, town of York was only about 800 at the time he passed. We're looking at about 10,000, so not big at all. So people didn't really care where they dumped their garbage. We had massive cholera outbreaks in 1832. Police went around and were fining different houses for trying to clean up the streets, and they fined Campbell House for having what they say was an excessively overflowing outhouse. The servants would be using the outhouse. They'd be dumping everything back there. The Campbells didn't have to worry about it, didn't have to think about it. Because it didn't matter what was on the outside, it mattered what was on the inside of the house. The inside looked great. Finally, over here we have a tin hip bath. Bit of an unusual design. Tin hip baths usually aren't this ornate, but it's quite lovely. Bathing wasn't super common back then. Most people would bathe their face and their arms every day, but you wouldn't have a full bath very often, maybe every couple of weeks. And again, I don't say this is a hard fact because everyone's bathing preferences were a little different. But a tin hip bath, you might pull it out from the underneath the bed once a month and have a servant bring them some hot water and have a little sponge bath. Then you were good for a while. People had a different understanding of how disease worked back then. They understood, okay, well, Muddy York, the well water is very contaminated. Drinking from the public wells isn't terribly safe. They understood that rotting things smell bad, dead things smell bad. Smell, therefore, must have some connection to disease, and therefore, if we cover ourselves in perfumes and oils, we can ward off disease. And the rich people in the city who could afford the perfumes and oils, they were doing just fine. You know, they were, but they also had clean private wells. They often had much better, higher quality food sources. But unfortunately, you know, those in the town that were more uneducated would take a look at that and go, oh well, if they could afford the perfumes and oils and they're doing fine, then if only I can raise enough money to buy more perfumes and oils, I will be healthier as